We're going to be learning how to play Yahtzee. So for Yahtzee, there are 4 different steps. First, you're going to think about your behavior goals or whatever goal you want your students to achieve throughout the class period or throughout the day, depending on when you have your students. So for example, it's going to be find your 3 of a kind. And the reason you want to focus on 3 is because then it's not too many things for students to improve on, and it's 3 things that they can do. So for example, my 3, again, you will change and customize to whatever needs your class needs. But for example, I want my students to raise their hand, stay in their seats, and everyone has to have a pencil. So those are the 3 of a kind things I'm looking for maybe this week or that day, depending on maybe the lesson or the activity that we're working on. Step number 2 is they're going to do a vote. So after the class period or after the time or whenever, students are going to put their head down and they are going to vote on whether or not they think they met those 3 of a kind. So they are going to self-reflect and they're going to say, yes, our class did a great job of raising our hands today. Yes, we stayed in our seat. Yes, everybody had a pencil, or maybe no. And so again, they're going to raise their hand if they yes, and then their heads down if they're a no. You can't override them. So if you disagree, you can always say no and why. And then step number 3 is that reflection. So if they did all raise their hands and they got that vote, then talk about what went well. Maybe they didn't. If not, talk about ways that they can improve. How can they stay in their seat? What ways can they do that? If not everybody has a pencil, what are some strategies they could do, or what could they do so they do have a pencil for the next day? And then step number 4 is that rolling. So you are going to decide, is the teacher going to roll? Is nobody going to roll? Or is the class going to roll? And you will use 5 dice, just like you play Yahtzee. And you're going to play Yahtzee for about a month. And you're going to focus on those 3 of a kind. You can change those behavior goals, or you could keep them, or change one out as students maybe improve on one of those goals. And then you're going to keep track of the scoreboard. So right here, you can keep track of the scoreboard if you want to every single day by adding it up. And then the class can kind of compete against class by class, or they can get through class versus teacher. You could even do different table groups. Maybe one table group gets to roll. That's kind of up to you how you want to organize your scoreboard of how they're playing. And right here is that scoreboard for Yahtzee. So you can see up here, we've got all of the different classes and that teacher. And what the students are going to do is if they win, so again, if they're on step 2, their heads are down, every single student agrees and you agree that they met that 3 of a kind, then the class would roll. So they would roll all 5 dice. Let's say they get 4 of a kind, they put their score here, and then class 2 would go, class 3. Now let's say that, for example, on step 2, nobody raised their hand and you won. So you as the teacher won. This is where you can decide if you want to play or not. So you get to roll the dice and you can put your number right in the box. And let's say, for example, that you might tell your students that I get to roll every time today that the classes are bad. So for example, class 1 was awful, you roll for them. Class 2 was awful, you roll for them. Out of those 2 classes, you take your best score. In one class, you might have gotten all 5s or something, where another class you got a Yahtzee. So you might take that score of that Yahtzee because it's a higher number, where class 3 comes in and they were really good, so they get to roll instead of you. So again, you could play kind of that way if you wanted to. And then it's kind of like you get the best out of those 3 classes. Totally up to you on how you want to organize your Yahtzee game. But again, focus on those 3 of a kinds and